We're live. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another Western Balkans adventure travel webinar. Somehow or another, you have convinced yourself to watch another one of these, and we are here today. I'm Alex Kravar, your moderator for this monthly series. Today we are looking at how operators can get the most out of B2B, business-to-business tourism events or travel fairs. Attending travel fairs has been a tried and true tactic in the tourism world for decades. And the value of these events for networking and creating partnerships, producing new business is indisputable. However, profitable attendance at these functions is not an accident. Operators who achieve business-to-business success at fairs have clear strategies that include preparation, information dissemination, creating precise meeting schedules, and productive follow-up after the events. For this session of the webinar series, we will speak to 3 regional tourism experts here in the Balkans about the best ways to plan for, think about, and solidify networking opportunities at these travel events. The hope here is that operators out there listening, or anybody else who is listening, will pick up a few tips and have more event success in the future. And if we move on to slide number 2, this monthly series is brought to you by the Western Balkans Geotourism Network and the Via Nautica Alliance, as it is every month. Both of these are cross-border cooperatives who are committed to the strengthening of the region's sustainability through responsible tourism, as are all the guests that we have here on a monthly basis. The series is hosted by Balkan Vibe, the premier travel platform in the Western Balkans, which offers the widest range of tours for the region, as well as a seamless booking and credit card payment system. The series is supported by USAID and the REG, Regional Economic Growth Project. Manning the controls at Webinar Central in Sarajevo is Nermin Smajic. Thank you very much for this. Wouldn't be possible without you. For listeners and watchers out there generally, feel free to send in questions during the webinar. You can do that through either the join discussion box halfway down the Balkan Vibe registration page. You can also ask questions on this YouTube page in the chat section. We will answer as many questions as we have time for. Those that we can't get to, we will answer through text and email. And as always, these webinars are free. They'll be archived on the Balkan Vibe website, and you can check it and other past webinars out at your own convenience, perhaps with the mug of hot chocolate and, I don't know, a dog at your feet there on your chair. Your choice. Let's go to the slide 3 if we could, and we will start this in earnest. We have 3 guests today. I'm happy to say that all 3 of these tourism experts are also my good friends. And the first is Snezhina Dervishkadi. Hello, Snezhina, and she is from Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina. She is the tourism leader with USAID's Regional Economic Growth Project. She's also a regional tourism pioneer who has seen a lot of change in tourism in this region over the years. Laura, was that?
I said thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And thank you for being here. Our next guest is Laura Popovac. She is the director of VMD Adventure Travel based in Zagreb, Croatia. VMD has a wide range of adventure products and work with an array of partners, many of whom, I'm assuming, probably came through the kinds of events that we will be talking about here for the next, how long is this webinar? This webinar is typically, what, about 4.5 hours? Is that right? No, for the next 45 minutes, we will be talking about some of the folks that Laura has made relationships with over the years. Finally, we have Chiri Jubair. I'm going to just go ahead and call him the B2B event Zen Master. He's also from Sarajevo. He is the managing partner at Green Visions Eco Tours and coordinator of the Via de Nautica Alliance, a cooperative of operators in the Western Balkans. Thank you all very, very much for taking time out of your days and taking just generally time out of your schedules to make this happen today. Let's go ahead and go to slide number 4, which is our first of the working slides, and I'll start this with Chidi. As we spoke before we went on the air, all of you have participated in these events together and individually. So to some degree, even though we've worked on a lot of these slides together, and the information comes from y'all and from y'all individually, I'm going to start with folks and just let this play out to some degree. And I'll start this with Chidi. And what exactly, in the most basic of terms, what exactly are these events? And what value do they have for operators? What are you seeking when you go to one of these travel fairs? And each of Laura and Snezhina, feel free to chime in as Chidi makes his point.
Yeah, there are a few things why we go to fairs. One is, you can see it there, is to meet people from the industry, because these are just events where various events around the world with specific focuses. It could be anything from outdoor adventure, more general fairs, cycling. I mean, it could be a whole range, but you're sure to meet people with similar interests at those fairs, and people who have companies who are interested in meeting up with new partners, so that they want new products, so they're interested in hearing what you have to offer. It's a great place for companies like ourselves in the region to kind of inform the rest of the world about what is going on in our region and what kind of products are there. It's great just to meet people who who we all know, tell them about new ideas and the new ideas that are around. And the other thing, which for me is always interesting, it's kind of cool, to hear what other people are doing and what in the industry is happening. And it could be, very specific in terms of marketing ideas, social media, but it can also be trends in the market, different, what kind of trends are, what's happening in the US, what kind of tour guests, how people are booking. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I mean, when you're based like in the Balkans, you're kind of very much into the Balkans, but you don't necessarily know what's going on outside of the big Balkans. So yeah, so it's kind of good to hear what's going on in the rest of the world.
And I'm guessing, I mean, for most folks, I've had this discussion with everybody here on many occasions. But tourism as a thing is kind of this odd. I mean, it's just this incredibly huge industry, but it's hard to really put your finger on exactly what it is. But these, because there's so many intangible aspects. It's not like you're holding a product, like you're at a convention where people are selling, a specific handheld product. This isn't like going to somewhere where you're selling, high electronic products or something. So there's an aspect here that these are really conventions, I guess, of some sort. I mean, you're going there to sell things. Laura, how does that work for VMD? I mean, when you guys are going to make a decision like this, how are y'all putting it into what the value of these hold? Are these are conventions to go to between different operators?
Well, we always decide on which one we want to go or where we want to present ourselves. It's like we want to go there to be a little bit closer, because sometimes it's difficult to bring partners to the Balkan region. And going to the fairs makes it a little bit more easier for us to bring what we have to offer to them. And then with the personal touch and conversation, the feelings that we share on these fairs make it a little bit more easier for the operators to actually decide to come and visit, to explore, or even decide to work in a Balkan. I think that in this modern era, with all this technology that we have, we are still we need this personal touch. That's what we are offering here in Balkan. And when you go to the fair, you have an opportunity to actually meet people who you are going to work with or who you are working with. And afterwards, it makes it much more easy to continue working, because you met them, talked to them personally, face to face, and discuss all these details that are very important and sometimes get lost between the words. So I think that except to get this, everything that Thierry mentioned, it's very important to know all the new trends that are in tourism. And the tourism is so fast in developing and changing, so it's really, really good to hear the other side as well, or even to see what other countries are offering as well. So it's really nice to get inspired by what everybody else are doing as well.
Yeah, and I don't want to go too overboard with a couple of these questions, because we're going to get to some of these in the end. But I do want to bring Snezhina in for a moment, because there's something that strikes me that I really like about tourism fairs, but it does seem to kind of buck the trend of I mean, even for instance, we're doing this webinar series. Part of the reason to do a webinar series is because we all wanted to communicate with people in the region, and it doesn't make sense from a timing perspective to constantly get together for seminars. But so there's something that's kind of old school about these events in a way that is cool, but also very much means that you have real time to go shake hands and meet people in person. Well, how valuable is that, do you think, Snezhina, because it's a pretty personal thing that you get in with tourism. It's not like you're handing somebody the keys to a car. You're taking people on trips across to other countries.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, the trade fairs to a large extent are like the old-fashioned events. But at the same time, as Laura mentioned, it is really important that you get to know people. You communicate part of the way how your business functions, and these events allow to do exactly that. Especially when you're trying new products, even with existing partners, it's a completely different thing when you know each other personally, and then to approach with a new idea, or to explore whether something like some new idea would work. It's a completely different if you actually know a person, or if you can be referred by someone who you know, rather than just coming out of the blue. So from that perspective, I mean, tourism is requires that you do have a certain amount of direct contact. And although there is all this technology, when it actually comes to people coming to a destination, that is all personal contact. And part of what kind of a personal contact their guest is going to receive, your potential partners actually see when they meet you. So it's very important passing that message on from the very start, and taking the opportunity to get to people to know each other.
And I think what is also, I think what's interesting as well, a fair, and you touched a little bit on it, fairs are, are places to meet. So, within a fair, there are various ways in how you can meet people. It's like either you have a table or a stand and people come there and you set up meetings, etc. Or within the fairs, a lot of times there are all kinds of events and seminars and workshops being organized. And these things are also very interesting. So if you have like a responsible tourism network that's meeting, or there's there's something about mountain biking. I mean, it could be anything. There's lots of themes, responsible tourism. And at those specific events within the fairs, you get to meet people, like-minded people, and you can make, strengthen your connections there, make new connections, become part of different groups within your industry. because the industry, I mean, like when you talk about tourism, this is huge, you know, and it's incredible. And so trying to break it down, I think that's kind of interesting within fairs. There are various opportunities, you know, I mean, because for instance, we're now going to the Adventure Travel World Summit. There are many different, you know, within that 4-day event, you have so many opportunities to build connections, you know, and I think that's the uniqueness about fairs or about these kind of events. And they can be, you know, which you touched upon, they can be online, you know, they don't have to be, you know, in a space, physical space. They're good, and a lot of them are. But you need to just make sure, you know, that you attend those kind of spaces or those kind of places that are interesting to you and where you think that you will find like-minded people and you can get, you know, you can talk about your product or learn something.
Yeah, and that's thank you for that, actually, Chidi, because that did, I mean, in the definition of this, I didn't really even prompt that, but I mean, that is part of this also. There's lots of meetings, there's also lots of events, and there's lots of guest speakers, there's lots of ways to learn. And what I think is interesting about this, not as an operator, but having watched all of y'all operate, it's interesting to me that there's a huge component of being prepared that actually allows for some of the chance meetings that you will have. If an entire fair is just one giant string of chance meetings, you're probably wasting a little bit of money and a little bit of time, because these are huge events. I mean, ITB in Berlin, which we go to all every year, is like a city. I mean, you know, the chances of you getting exactly done what it costs you to do while you're there, you know, it's a big chance to take. And on that transition, I wanted to with the slide that's up here now, I wanted to throw this to Laura for just a moment concerning, obviously there are some events that are worth going to. I think some operators go to certain events, some operators don't go as often as others. But there must be different reasons that some fairs are worth going to, and they're probably not always worth attending.
Yeah.
So what are some of the reasons for that, for why something might be worth attending or not?
So first, I would say that don't be afraid to make a mistake for the first time that you are planning to going on any kind of a fair, because as the tours that we sell, it's all about experience. You have to go to see what's going on, and if you make a mistake in a first year, you will know better for the next one. And I'm sure that everybody of us went on one of the fair that wasn't really working for our companies, but then we made really good conclusions to be better in deciding in next year's preparation for the fairs. So it's really good to prepare, you know, to find to check out which partners have already signed in, or who is planning to go, who is interesting for you, to try to make a contact before you go to the fair. It's very important to ask for the meeting and tease them a little bit of with what you are offering, so they can that they will actually come to your meeting. Of course, on the big fairs like ITB that you mentioned, it's always a lot of people, and sometimes your meetings will probably not happen. But I don't think it's that you don't have to be worried about it, because after the whole event, if you get one good quality partner, you are okay. If you didn't have enough time to prepare, then, you know, think about it. But take your time, surf or look through everything that's offering on the seminar or the fair, and then you will be okay. It's not, it doesn't take a lot of time, but it's really worthwhile.
And I think I'll say one thing important is that, you know, a good fair for VMB might not necessarily be a good fair visions. And
That's true.
and I think what you said is so important. Is you need to, as a company, just try out things, put your priorities, out there, have your products ready, and then see if it works. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes fairs, work because you have kind of a strategy, and you're going 1 or 2 or 3 years in a row, and then you've kind of depleted it, or you don't feel you're getting as much out of it, and it's okay. You don't have to go every single year to the same fair. You can try new things. The market is changing as well. People are changing. Other companies are looking around, and there are fairs are just one component within our whole marketing arena. So there are online events, there are B2B meetings that you can set up yourself. You can do a lot of things, in like what we're doing here within the Western Balkans, within the Adriatic Alliance. You can be very creative, but just see if it works for you for a while, and then if it doesn't, it's okay. Move on, do something else.
If I can just add in, because I think both Laura and Thierry kind of said this, and I think there are a couple of points to maybe highlight. One is, trade fair doesn't stand out by itself. So it is a part of the overall package for reaching out to the market. And each trade fair brings its costs. So this is something that, you kind of look at whether that it is the most effective way for you in that market in that time. What I'm trying to say is, maybe trade fair right now is not the right solution because you're only opening the market. So you will not go with a stand, but you will visit the fair to see how it operates in that particular market, how it works, with a plan to maybe have a stand next year. But in the meantime, you want to do a trade visit and, maybe try and talk to some of those who are most interesting partners for you and see if you have certain amount of interest. So I think that that's very important to keep in mind, that you're not looking, or we're not looking at trade fairs as events by themselves, but as a part of a package of the overall outreach to the market. And then the second thing that I think is very important that Laura mentioned, and that is you also look not only me as an operator or a company or a destination in that particular trade fair, you look at your partners, both international and regional, and discuss with them. If the fair is not really, if you don't know much about it yourself, they could be your sources. How do you learn more whether that fair would be relevant for you without having to invest to the particular event? So that was the only little bit to add to what was already said.
Yeah, those are great. But Snezha, before you leave, I want to ask you this, because this is pretty basic stuff for folks that are listening out there, because the folks who are going to devote a certain amount of their budget, their marketing budget to these, obviously it changes based on to what degree you're visiting the fair, whether or not you have a stand and so forth and so on. Mm-hmm. But let's pretend like somebody has a stand at a fair, and without putting exact amounts of euros on this, because they're all different. What are some of the costs that an operator would be looking at least basically? Because they, folks need to weigh this against what they're potentially going to get out of it.
Well, I think it's really a huge range. It's a huge range from specialized events that are usually a little bit more acceptable in price to these large events like ITB or WTM, that are much higher cost, driven both by the prices of the market where they are, like WTM, and by the status of the fair. There is a certain amount of flexibility by how much space you take. So the range can vary for stand, I would say, from 2,000 to 3,000 euros to 30,000 euros. And this is not necessarily only in amount of space. You cannot get into WTM for 2,000 to 3,000 euros, but you can get into the adventure show in London for that amount of money. So, it's also looking at not only the market, but which of the fairs would be really most appropriate for what you're trying to do. So, for example, I don't know, for a cruise ship, the adventure travel market doesn't make sense. But for an adventure company, it makes perfect sense to maybe invest in that event in the UK rather than WTM. So, you know, this range is huge, but that's why also, again, looking at your colleagues and partners and the ways to maybe go together, but we'll come to that topic later, is also an opportunity how to control your costs and how to control the amount that, because on top of the actual rate of the fare, you also have the travel costs for each of the countries.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, you also have to get there and you have to stay there.
Yeah,
I mean, you have to stay in London, you know, or New York or South America, which several of you are about to go to. I mean, it costs something. And that's not to say that these are not costs that are worth it, but there's something that you need to calculate this, because it is, you know, all of us work for a living.
Yeah.
You know, if we wouldn't be talking on this webinar if we weren't working for a living. So, I mean, you know, these are things to, and I just very quickly, if we could go to the next slide, but as we go to the next slide, I want to ask this anecdotally to the group, and maybe let's just get the answer from Laura, though, just from a time perspective here, because I think that the last one was your point. Have you been to or chosen, I should say, have you chosen not to go to an event, a fair, because you didn't feel like you were prepared enough, and you just didn't quite think that the overall equation was going to be worth it to you because of what it was going to cost and what you thought you potentially were going to get out of it?
Well, we did everything. We went on a fair which cost a lot of money, putting our own stand where we had only 3 people coming to our stand. We went on few of the fairs where we just wanted to see how it works. We went on a 2 or 3 where we put our stand and had some business afterwards. So, and sometimes the smart decision is not to go if you see that you don't have enough time to prepare, because it's really a pity to waste all of this money if you are not ready to go. But nevertheless, it's good to try and see what's good for you. You know, if you have it's good to see, even if it doesn't pay off in a first year when you actually go to a fair. It's a long process, you know. You have to be somewhere there, exposed for everybody to see you, and acknowledge that you are working, and that your company is here, that it exists, that it works, that prepares new programs and new offers each year. So
yeah, I think
Chidi, I want to this is gonna, the next slide also feeds on that. So the point that you're about to make might actually be this too, because I'm going to ask your opinion specifically about this. Having to do, because there's a lot of fairs out there, and incorporate what you're about to say to this, because I have a feeling they're probably related. There's a lot of fairs out there, and how do you, for instance, how does Green Visions make a decision about which ones? I'm sure that both of y'all, all 3 of you, have been to fairs that in the end, you know, you went and it just didn't pan out perfectly, even though you did all the things correctly. How do you decide, at least before you go, which ones suit your needs? Which are the ones that you think, you know, this is, I mean, because there's a lot of, for the people who are listening out there, there's a whole lot of fairs to look at and a whole lot of things to think about, and they obviously want to maximize their exposure, their possibilities, their networking, and so forth. What's the thought process for you?
Well, you look at where your clients or your guests are coming from, or could be coming from, and obviously as a company you have some kind of, you have a strategy. You have a strategy, put a plan in place, and you say, okay, it's a basically a marketing strategy and a focus, and these can be, in Green Visions' case, we focus on various markets. We have a UK market, we have a US market, we have German market, Scandinavian, kind of put it together. But and what you want to do is you want to see if you can get, for whatever reason, you have an idea that you can get clients from those regions. And there are obviously different ways of going about it. You can go directly to the traveler, or you can go through other tour operators in those countries. And in our case, like for instance, let's talk about the German market. We were very interested in accessing the German market, and we saw the ITB and there were some other smaller fairs around in Germany, and we thought like, hey, Germany's very close by. The market there's a lot of people from Bosnia in Germany, so access is kind of easier. People travel well, they're adventurous, the Germans. So let's go on to this market. And we started a long time ago, I think about 2005 or 6, on the German market. And we went 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and we didn't really see a big increase in German guests. And the reason for that was they weren't ready. And we had presentations, and we had work with journalists, and there was a lot of projects that we developed, and but we realized that the German market was just not ready for a Bosnian product. And so after, I don't know, 2009, 2010, we stopped going there to, for instance, some of those fairs. But we were working still. In those 3 or 4 years, we built up relationships with some tour operators, because we tried some German tour operators and we tried some stuff, but we kept those relationships. And this is something that Laura said, you go to those fairs to build up relationships, and you just say, hey, I'm here, we're still operating, we're very much working, and you might not necessarily be doing a lot on the market, but still people see that you're operating, you haven't disappeared, because there's a lot of companies that come and go. And then
that is a lot of bravery, though. I mean, you have to be pretty brave to throw that line into the water year after year, hoping that 5 years down there. I mean, this is a compliment, by the way. This is not me being difficult. That's a lot of bravery. I mean, you guys put in 5 or 6 years of expenditures to go to this, so that hopefully in 2012 it would work out.
Well, but what you're doing is you're constantly trying out things, and you're seeing, this is what I said in the beginning. You have a strategy, you have some ideas, you come up with a plan, and you work it through, and you see there's no results there, and then it's okay. You're not going to plunk in, it's a lot of, there's a lot of money that goes in, but you don't see any return. But then there are ways of keeping your relationships still there, because you don't want to disappear from the German market. You don't want all the relationships that you have built up just go cold for the next 3-4 years, because you're going to lose. People are going to go like, oh, they don't exist anymore. But what you do want to do is you want to go in different ways. Maybe work with the media a little bit more, do more things that are maybe build. Even in Bosnia, maybe build. What we did was we worked a little bit more on projects, so that we built some of the infrastructure that was necessary for these Germans to come, German guests to come. But then at the same time, we were also with the alliance, and then some of the members in the alliance had better relationships with German operators like yourself. VMD has Croatia has much better relationship with the German market. But then over time, we worked with. Within this alliance, VMD and Green Visions developed products that included included Bosnia and Germany, and all of a sudden it became the alliance, and the fairs became kind of interesting, because now people, the German market, we realized was, hey, we can go to Croatia and see also a little bit of Bosnia. So, so that was also a moment in time when we said, okay, maybe it's time to go back to these fairs in Germany, and to look a little bit more, to start accessing some of those companies, because maybe now the time is, the time is right. And then we were also working with the Via di Narca, the promotion. So there was a lot of information coming out there. So you need to, I think it's a process, and you should never, even if you start, you start with something and you think like, oh, this is just a bummer, it's not going to work, there's no result. Look at it from a long-term perspective. Over 15 years, you know, in the German market, for us, it's been growth. And you know, whereas this year, for instance, you know, we've had more Germans than ever, and now we actually need more guides and more German-speaking guides. And it's a really great feeling that you can go step by step. So you don't necessarily always need to look really like, okay, you know, I've plunked in €2,500 now. You know, next year I need to get all of that out. You probably sometimes you can be lucky, you know, or lucky. You can be you can work out and you can get much more return. But if you're in a Bosnian market like we are, small incremental you know, successes have paid off. And okay, so maybe 2 or 3 years you don't go to a fair, but you do other things, keep your relationships, and then you come back.
That all makes sense, and it gets back to part of what Snezhna was saying a few minutes ago, and the fact that this is part of your marketing budget. So obviously it's important to make these choices, and so you know, this represents part of your marketing budget, and part of your marketing budget in the beginning. And again, we're speaking specifically to operators out there who have maybe less experience going, and they would like to have a little bit more knowledge before they go to some of these events that are happening, because we're kind of we're leaving the season, the middle of the meat of the season, and we're getting into the shoulder season when some of these tourism fairs and events start to happen in the fall and in the winter, especially in the next spring. And they're looking for trying to decide on, you know, whether they should go, and some knowledge there. Part of is understanding that this is an experimental, maybe a little bit of a explorative aspect of this is that, and you know, we've pushed very hard so far in this about being prepared and so forth for these meetings. So I'll transition a little bit here with how does one prepare, and let's start here with you, Snezhna, because over the years you've had to set up a heck of a lot of meetings to these. What is part of that process? I mean, we have there at the top of the list on this slide the be thorough and when you're scheduling your meetings. What are things that you need to keep in mind when you're going to these? Obviously, you're not just showing up and busting in the door and saying, "Hi, I represent blah blah blah." I mean, you've got to have your stuff together.
Well, you can try busting, but you won't get far. I think the thing is also to again to just take a tiny little bit step back and see or be aware whether you are going to the fair yourself, or you're going to the fair as a part of the group of companies, or you're going to the fair as a part of the National Tourism Organization presentation, because each of these differs to you know, to a certain extent. But I think looking from the company perspective, I would say that it's important that start doing your research as early as possible. Some of these fairs, some of the larger fairs, and some of the markets, you know, larger markets have quite early registration deadlines. For example, WTM, which is obviously, you know, out there as being the high status fair, but the fair actually happens in November. They close registration in April. So depending on what the fair is that you're looking at, you need to start looking relatively early, or I would say even a year in advance, so to make sure that you know your deadlines and you know what is your maneuvering space. The next thing I think it would, to be honest with you, I think from the company perspective, it would really be, you know, Laura and Thierry would be much more on the spot with this one, but I would say researching who is there, researching who your targets are in that market, and reaching out to them directly, be it through the trade fair facility, because some of them do have like a possibility, you know, separate apps or different options where you can actually reach out to registered participants, or you can reach out to the, you know, to the company directly through their own website and try and identify and attract their interest so that you can meet with them during the fair and present. Obviously, in that communication, you would be talking about your company and your product much earlier than the actual fair. And hopefully, you know, if you manage to secure the time at the fair, then you would be providing at that meeting to them what they showed interest for, rather than just talking generally about. That is not to say that you don't need to have general information ready and be able to deliver it at the fair as well, because it can happen that somebody, either your company or your destination attracts attention of someone right there at the fair, so you need to be able to respond to that as well. The only other thing that I will add, and then I will really pass this on to Laura and Thierry, because this is something where their expertise is, I've done it for many years, but their expertise is seen in the results of their companies. But the only other thing is that I would say is that, in this preparation, you need to be aware of the standing of the destination that you are promoting and selling in that particular market as well, so that you can gauge the amount of information that you need to provide about the destination as opposed to your programs only. If the destination is well known, then you can focus more on your programs. If the destination is unknown, then you need to incorporate that information as well. And
yeah, so Laura, this is that's great, and that's great information. And Laura, I'll go fishing a little bit here for some expertise, for some expert hints for folks who are listening. How do you go about it? So let's say you're looking at, I'm just going to make up the fair. It doesn't really matter which one, but in this case, I'll just go with ITB because it does have such a big website and such a pretty thorough amount of information. This is not, by the way, folks in Berlin, this is not specifically supposed to be an advertisement for your fair, but we're using it. Or ATTA later this year, whatever. What do you do? What's your process, Laura, for when you're looking through here and you're making a decision? Hey, VMD from Croatia wants to go to this fair, and I know I need to set up XYZ meetings. What's your process?
Yeah, so we look up in what other companies in Croatia or in the region are offering for that market. If it would be a German market, then we would see what other companies are offering and see if we can offer something different, some other program that would be more interesting, or something that nobody else is offering, so that would attract new tour operators to come actually to Croatia, to offer them something different. And one more very important thing is that don't be afraid to team up with your competitors in your country. You can go together. We had this great fortune to work with Thierry and with Snezana and with the other people from Via Dinarica Alliance, and from that experience we tried last year to go with other companies from Croatia to ITB. And I think it's sometimes, well, first when I was thinking about the fair, going to the fair maybe 10 years ago, I was always looking for the possibility to go as VMD alone. And when you are not a very big company, it's a lot of expenses, and then you sometimes decide not to go because you don't see the point in spending a lot of amount of money of your marketing stash that you have put aside. But if you want to share or team up with other companies, it's, I think, really okay, because it has a lot of benefits. You are sharing ideas with your colleagues. You can, get introduced to a lot of people if you multiply by the people on your stand, if you know what I mean. So absolutely, don't be afraid of competition, because it only makes you better, and there is a lot of people that want to travel. So it makes sense to share a stand with somebody else, and that won't make it any more not good for you. It will be worth your while, definitely.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I think that we almost always see that when folks work together and drop the kind of petty, cutthroat competition, even if you were to lose a small percentage of business in the early going, the larger percentage that would come because of the exponential aspect of having more exposure. I mean, if nothing else, I mean, if, obviously with another company, you're not just getting twice the exposure, you're getting twice the exposure plus all the other people that are being exposed to the two of you and all of their people. This isn't a very smooth transition, but I wanted to ask you, Chidi, about part of what's here with the preparation of the fair, because this is something that you've always done very well, is create some of the marketing material, both online, but also physical material, and to kind of do some of your pre-fair information creation. How important is that? I mean, can't you just go there and shake hands and have meetings? I mean, do you really have this stuff prepared?
I mean, I think it's good to have to be able to hand out something, to give something to people, something that looks good, that is that it's appropriate, it's for that specific fair, something that people can take with them. Things are changing, so a lot of times, before people used to have big bags and were carrying all kinds of material with them, and now it's gone much more online, etc. I think for the preparation, you need to somehow be able to stick out a little bit in terms of a relationship that you build at the fair, and you really don't have a lot of time, So so I kind of like getting people together, not necessarily as in, okay, I mean, you have a meeting, you can sit down, and sometimes that's important as well, because you want to work out some things, and these people that you're meeting are very, very much interested in a specific topic, and then this one-to-one is interesting. But sometimes what we also do is just organize an event, organize a workshop, organize a showing of something, or just see if you can bring people together.
Specifically your company, you're saying?
It could be
you go with.
It's a company, but I like to think that with most of the fairs that Green Visions goes to, there is always a component of like the alliance or a network. I completely believe that networks like that enhance our destination. Actually, in the case of Bosnia-Herzegovina, I think it's actually elevated, the country as a destination through those alliances, through those networks, that otherwise we would not have been able to, the kind of marketing benefits we get from these kind of networks are just incredible. But I think what's important is that obviously you need materials, you need to give something to people so that they remember you. There are chance meetings, they are there. There are meetings that you've set up, and then you want to give something that's appropriate. But to be honest, I think the days are gone, especially for companies like ourselves, where you just kind of print 100,000 brochures and you hand them out to as many people as possible and hope that you get some feedback from there. That's not our strategy. I think I'd rather put time and energy in creating great partnerships, alliances, and then go to the fairs, and then at these fairs, do an event, give something to your community. It could be into community, I mean by other professionals, outdoor adventure professionals, tourism professionals, and give them something that they would otherwise not get, or it would be difficult to get. And it could be anything. It could be research you've done. It could be a cool video you've made, but it could be a workshop on a specific slow food or something. Something interesting that obviously it's based on your research. Something that you've found that this is of interest to your market. So I think that the preparation is very very important. Yeah.
But the preparation, I guess what you're saying has changed a little bit. I mean, as opposed to having a stack of flyers these days, part of your preparation, obviously you're going to have specific things for the folks that you're going to meet, that have expressed interest in yes, while you're in London or Berlin or wherever, New York or wherever you are, I want to specifically meet. Well, not to some degree, completely, this is a captive audience in that case, and you would hand them something. But if you're standing at your stand, I guess it's changed a little bit. I mean, part of it, you might have a video presentation going on a loop behind you at the stand, showing this, for instance, like you said, the slow food situation that's happening in your country or that your company is offering, or maybe you have USB sticks now these days. Maybe those are even too old-fashioned. I don't know. Are USB sticks old-fashioned now? I feel like anything that's actually physically is physical is old-fashioned now. I mean, there'll be a time when we're just like telepathically putting our USB sticks into our brains without actually having to hand anything.
That's what we are doing now.
At this moment, is this the final charge before y'all take me over? Is this it?
No, but if I can, yeah. Just a quick note, when you're saying is the USB too old-fashioned, it again, depends on the market.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. US market is much more advanced than some of the European markets. Some of the European markets, especially on the general public days, people still like to actually collect some brochures and go back home and flick through them. So that's part of the preparation, is trying to figure out what are the, the purchasing habits, and preparing both for the business side of it, and also, if the fair has, then for the general public side of it. So I think that's the balance that you need to kind of figure out in your preparation process. Who are you going after? Are you going only after the business side? Are you going to address both sides if the fair has that possibility? Because some fairs are only business to business. Some fairs are only general public. Some fairs combine it, have 3 days of business and 2 days of general public. So, based on that, you would also figure out which materials to prepare for whom, and to what level of technical savviness you need to go. Although I would agree with Thierry in a sense that majority of people still, or especially in the business side, really don't want tons of paper. The furthest those things will get is their hotel room. When it starts packing to go home, half of that or more than half of that stays left in the hotel room. So for the business side, definitely some kind of electronic format, whatever, would be the best. I think becoming more and more important, and less paper, although you might have some paper with you that you actually use in the meetings and you show, but for the information for them to take back, it's usually in some form of electronic format. For general public,
I think what is also important is just that we don't look at the handout as just one thing. We have to look at the whole range of things that we do at these fairs. Handout is one thing, I mean, USB is another thing. It could be very appropriate, as Snezana is saying, but then a really good, beautiful stand is another thing. Good poster, or an event that you're organizing, or going, to some of these presentations that are being organized around you and meeting up there. I mean, there's so many different, so many different activities, and that we should be looking at, during a fair. So many different things that we should be doing at these fairs, and one of them is creating some material, useful material for people that they can take with them. But others, there are so many other things that we should be doing, because we're, there's business to business, there's this potential guest, and there is networking with our peers. Meeting new people. I mean, there are a whole range of things, and I think we, USBs have a place there, to just say USBs or a poster, or
I know that some of you Via Nautica people have even created these little snazzy jackets that I've seen you guys dancing around at these events, and everybody looks like they really have their act together. I assume that you actually do have your act together, but it makes it look better when you look like maybe some kind of dance group. But just kidding. Actually, I love those jackets, and mine. I'd like to have one because they're snazzy. We're going transition here a little bit to now. We've gotten all this together. We've researched it. We've made a decision about what makes sense for us as an operator, hypothetically. Looking at the correct fairs, looking at the website to see the events that it offers, potentially the workshops that our employees could go to if we go as a group, or how we can present our information. Lauda, if you're at this event and you've got all these meetings set up and you've got your stand set up and you've got your stuff there, what should you be trying to accomplish? I mean, how do you know, in real time, what are you saying to yourself? In order for this to be a success for me, I need to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. So first, you mentioned it, and now I want to emphasize it. Bring somebody from your office. It's always useful. It's very inspiring, and sometimes it happens when you come back from the fair, you are very enthusiastic and full of energy, and then other people don't understand what you've been through. So if you can, bring somebody with you so you can share afterwards. And then don't have high expectation of having meet a lot of people. It's really good if you are. So on the big fairs, there is a lot of people there, and you can't quality talk with everybody. But if you are able to have 3 meetings or 5 meetings through the whole fair that are actually the quality meetings, then you will be okay. Afterwards, you can continue the contact and have the future afterwards with this new partner that you made. So that's all for me.
Yeah, and I can add, if
Please.
I can add to that. Again, I have. I mean, it's important to get contacts. It's important, of course. We're doing this to improve, to have more business for our companies. But sometimes it's also, in order to develop more business, in our case here with Western Balkans Geotourism Network and with the Alliance, is also understanding each other allows us creating better relationships between Green Visions and VMD, etc. Helps us develop new products, helps us also develop products that for the market are interesting. So now, the product, I think in our case, like with the Alliance, we're talking about a whole region, Western Balkans. We're talking about 6 countries, sometimes 7 countries that are in a product. And for us, on a fair like this, it's very intense, but we also get to be together. We develop new ideas. We're working sometimes with some similar partners that we have. And so we might, VMD and Green Visions might be, and with other partners, we might be sitting there and talking to a client that we share and creating a new product. So what we're actually doing here is sometimes it's, we're creating new business out of existing business or out of our relationships, and that to me on fairs is sometimes also actually I wouldn't say it's the only thing, but for Green Visions it's really worked very well in nurturing our regional partnerships to develop new business through those partnerships. And to me, it's kind of interesting to develop, products that include 3-4 different kind of businesses, outdoor adventure businesses that could potentially be each other's, I would say, competitors, but at the same time, we're not treating it that way. We're actually developing new products together, and actually, we're building the market.
That's just such a great point all the way around. And we pointed out that almost all these webinars are based on people like you, Chitty, and like everybody on this panel who think with a kind of different level of sophistication. And that seems very easy in theory. It's not so easy to do until you actually do it, and then it becomes very easy that you guys have because you see the value of working together and the exponential possibilities of more business because of those relationships. I do want to hit on something, maybe the next slide, and we're going to go through 2 or 3 more. We're zeroing in on time here, and I want to try to be cognizant of that. So this is something I want to specifically throw to you, Chidi, because I don't just say this to embarrass you, although you know I like to embarrass you when I get a chance. But I say this because this is something you are particularly strong with, is creating a database when you come back from these events and really making sure you follow through with following up. Maybe could you just give us a couple minutes here and just describe what your process is, why that's so important, and why this means a lot for the future of going to fairs and just your relationships.
I mean, we meet a lot of people at fairs. Yeah, so there's a lot of there are a lot of people, especially now with the Western Balkans. People are interested. So you meet a lot of people. They come. They want to hear about the product, and there's a lot of things going on. And it's you have 4 days, 5 days, and there's so much happening. I can't keep track of all of that. After an intense 2 days, on day number 3, I'm starting to forget already what's happened before, etc. So it's really good to kind of write that down. Use a simple, Google is very good at that. You can use a Google form. You set up a small database, and then once you collect all of that information, when you come home, you have a look at it, and you see, okay, wow, we had all of this information. There's requests out there. Some people didn't really know what they wanted. Others might have wanted something, so you can immediately follow up. But what I've seen is, over time is you meet so many people, and again, you're building the relationship, and you say, hi, I'm out here. You might not be doing anything in 2012, but hey, all of a sudden, 2017, that person that you met somewhere at the fair again, connects with you and says, hey, we met at that fair, and then you can go back, to your database and just look at it and say, oh, okay, yeah, we talked about so and so. But for me, I'm not, it's very intense, and the follow up, yeah, it's challenging, but if I don't have the database, then yeah, it becomes very difficult. But what I would like to add to that,
I wanted.
I just ask you a quick, Chidi. It's challenging to make sure that you stay disciplined about creating the database, or what do you mean by challenging?
No, challenging just to follow up afterwards, because there's so many ideas and so many things happening. But I think what you, for me, it's like when you go, you still need to have your strategy. When you're at the fair, and the idea, where you want to go to and what you want to achieve. And I think the database itself, when you come back there, I mean, there's so much out there. There's so many opportunities, ideas, etc. You need to put that database to the function of your strategy, because otherwise you just go all over the place, because people want information about this, about that. They want you want to go, the media wants different types of stories, etc. But you will, when you get back, it can be, you don't necessarily have the time to, if you have a database with 40 requests or 40 companies to really follow up. So you need to go and look at that database and see, okay, so where am I going to put my time and energy? Because we also have small companies. We don't have big, we do other things too. So when we get back after being away for I don't know, now 10, 14 days, because we've gone out to do different fairs, etc., and then we come back, there's stuff concerning guiding, concerning quality in the company, new products,
You mean life didn't stop? It kept going, even though you were on the road. But Laura, what were you going to say here? Because I can tell you had a point.
Yeah. I wanted to say that don't give up on following up after the fair, because
the T-shirt.
So you can, you send an email after the conversation you had, and sometimes, or almost all the time, people get a lot of emails after they've been to the fair. So give them some time to get done with all the work that they missed while they were on the fair, and contact them again in a, I don't know, month or so to continue the conversation. Don't give up at the first email if you don't get the response right away, because you have to have the understanding that there is a lot of people on the fairs as well.
As we shift in, that's great, and just to piggyback on what both of you were saying, I think that to some degree, obviously seeing it as a non-operator, but seeing it as somebody who also has to follow up in his daily life, there is to some degree, this is some kind of marker of success. If you were to come back from a tourism fair and you have 40 or 50 emails to send, there's to some degree that, you know, that's a marker of success. It means that you've made 40 contacts that you feel are worth following up with, and that's a great thing. If we're going to, let's go to the last couple of slides, and I'm going to try to incorporate this in as slick a way as I can, because we're zeroing in on time here. We have two questions, both of them from, one is from Macedonia, which is folks we know that they're based in Skopje, Macedonia. And their question is a good one here. And I'm going to throw these two slides, we're going to go interchangeably. This is this one and the one after it. Maybe we can go to the one after it first, the next one, and then we can come back to this one. We'll answer these two questions within these two slides. And I'm going to throw this to Snezhina to start here. The question is, what are your experiences with your country tourism agencies or NTOs, National Tourism Organizations, and taking part in these big events without spending so much money for a booth? And I'm going to go ahead and incorporate the other question because it's related. It was, if we have, potentially we can mention what some of the fairs are that we keep talking about in passing, as if this is common knowledge to anybody else listening here. Just hearing these acronyms probably don't mean a whole lot. So the two questions, and let's starting with this with Snezhina, is what are our experiences going with the country tourism agencies, and what are some of the fairs? And I'll start this with Snezhina by saying, on this slide, we talk, and we've mentioned this now several times, about going individually or going as a group. And maybe just give us some of your impressions of the advantages of those. And if you're really sharp, Snezhina, you can wind in these answers with this with these slides too. You're on mute, by the way. You should unmute yourself. That'll make it significantly more more.
I apologize for that. Yes. Well. You know, your comment that if I'm sharp, I can incorporate these kind of threw me off. No, this is, I think, you know, this is one of the questions that obviously stands in front of every company or destination when you're looking at, you know, whether to go and how to attend the fair. I would say that traditionally, you know, the big stands are organized by the national tourism organizations usually, and obviously depending on the way how they are organized, administered, and funded in their own countries, there are certain rules and regulations that they have to follow. And majority of the tourism organizations opt for allowing each tour operator to have their own space. That, I mean, from one perspective, that kind of makes perfect logic, but it usually kind of makes the stand space very formal and not as easy to approach for someone who's looking at the stand. Group stands that we call here, I mean, they're group stands anyway. You have, you know, on these traditional stands, you would also have groups of companies, so it's only one. But a group stand that goes under the same kind of name, like what we have done and experienced with these shared stands for Via Dinarica and the Western Balkans, don't have individual space for companies. They're organized by the space for for functions. So you would have the front desk, and we try whenever possible to organize the backspace for meetings or informal gatherings. And I think they are much easier to approach for someone looking from outside. So if if a stand like it by itself attracts attention, which Thierry was mentioning earlier, as part, stand is a part of your overall presentation at the event. So with the attractive stand, you attract attention. People will come to the stand, have a look at, and the fact that it's open, communicative, and that it's lively and dynamic, they feel that they can step in, maybe even listen in on a conversation a little bit by pretending that they're looking at the photographs and stuff like that, and then relatively gently and merge into the conversation. So that kind of stand, I think it's much more open for business. And it also, having a group of companies like what we have done recently, where when people see the interaction between the companies, that is part of the interaction that they can expect when they get to the destination. So that also shows what kind of atmosphere, what kind of people interaction they can experience on the ground. So when you have friendly interaction and people helping each other and jumping in and pulling each other into the conversation that they observe from outside, they see that the community works well, and they see that it's a community that they can rely on. So that all is a part of the message. And obviously, it ties back to the strategy of what how you want to present yourself and how you want to behave in that particular market, what Thierry was mentioning earlier. I mean, if you really want to build yourself only as independently, then I would say go with an independent stand. However, if we're looking from a perspective from a larger group of smaller companies that don't have the full resources, marketing department, sales departments, and everybody else that the large operators have, I think kind of a group presentation is really much more attractive and can serve much better the goals of what you're trying to achieve at a stand.
I think also what is important is that when there are national stands or NTOs, I think it's important to create a shared vision with tour operators. So that do something together, because to be honest, if there's no shared vision, why would you as a business be part of your of the, I don't know, the country stand if what they're presenting is not really what you're presenting. So if there's absolutely no focus on outdoor adventure or on small tour operators, and the focus is only on high-end hotels and I don't know, mass tourism, then obviously we as small outdoor adventure operators are not really interested in that. I mean, I wouldn't put my money in any kind of stand, just simply because they're present. You'll just get lost. So I think what Macedonia is saying is just we have good experiences, and we have experiences that could have been much better if we had if we had prepared in advance with the NTOs or with the country tourism offices. Hey, let's sit down. What's next year going to be like? What can we focus on? What is the focus of the country strategy going to be? And can we as operators, can we be part of that and promote that too?
I think it's a great discussion, and it could be an entire new discussion. And in fact, we're going to have something along those lines for the next webinar, kind of community tourism and how it relates to the larger picture. But even at the sake of evaporating time here, I just want to ask very quickly, maybe if somebody could give me about a 20 or 30-second answer. Because it's an interesting thing to go with an NTO, with a national tourism organization, because the national tour organization, of course, wants to, do the best that they can with all different kinds of tourism. But an NTO has to speak to a lot of the different aspects that it represents. It doesn't just represent community tourism, but it also does represent the the union of big hotels, resorts. You know, I mean, the National Tourism Organization represents everybody from mom and pop B&Bs to the largest hotel in the country. So it's an interesting, I mean, how do you go and fit in with what, if you do get invited to go with the NTO, how do you know, how does...
I think the main thing is you can't be everything for everyone. So
Okay.
a good example is Slovenia. Okay, they will have different stands at different places in a fair.
Okay.
And one, they're focusing on green and outdoor, and in another they're focusing more on the culture, or they have other, you know, they have different they're focusing on different aspects. I think, you know, as this is the whole, you know, this is what this webinar is about. You're going to put, you know, your limited resources into, you know, fairs and promotion and marketing. So small companies. I think just being part of a, you know, mass big country thing is just not effective. What is effective is just to go, if you know, talk to your NTO, talk to your tourism office, and see, can we focus on the Via di Nautica? Can we focus on, you know, I don't know, maybe even a smaller area where you are. And some NTOs are better than others, and some haven't are not there yet. But I think, you know, as small companies, we need, you know, we need to be smart and talk to our NTOs and say, like, hey, can we do something on mountain biking in, you know, in this specific fair with you? We need to be proactive. I think that's, you know, that's important.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say as well. A lot of times we think that we don't start the conversations with our tourist organizations because we don't, and we should, you know. Take some time to set up the meeting with them before the fair and see what they are interested in. Because if you are really offering something good and new, they will listen to you. It just takes a little bit more time and effort to actually organize these meetings and exchange of ideas. And afterwards, I believe that they will listen, because we are doing interesting things.
Yeah.
If I can add just a couple of things, I think one thing to be aware of is none of these relationships, you know, are short-term investment. So, you know, working with an NTO is also something that is a long-term strategy of, you know, helping the NTO figure out and, you know, what are the different aspects of tourism, because they have different pressures, as you mentioned yourself, Alex. So that, you know, that is one side. So be, you know, constantly in your own operation, be aware that this cannot be resolved 2 weeks before the fair. So it's a relationship that is built over a long time. The second thing that to be aware with the NTOs, I think, is also that NTOs are to a certain extent limited by the fact that they are representing one country. Product by itself or interest of the market and the visitors might not coincide with the borders, administrative borders of the countries. And this is where, you know, there's a segment of additional kind of effort and work to, you know, to present the product in the best possible way. For example, for ITB and for Via di Nautica, one of the reasons why we have decided to go with the regional stand in the Adventure Hall of ITB is exactly that. It links countries from Slovenia to Macedonia. Slovenia is in the Central European segment of the fair. Croatia is in Mediterranean, and not, you know, not to complicate further, and all the other countries. So, you know, this is something that is also, you know, part of the decision with what kind of a stand you go, group, national, or whatever. Slovenia, as Thierry has mentioned, is the first country of our region who has actually started doing that, having their country stand in the Central European, but branching out into the Adventure Hall with a small stand. So that's maybe something that we will see happening in the future more.
Wrap up here, I just want to mention a couple of things. I mean, as all these webinars, we could probably do a part 2 and a part 3 very easily. I just want to mention a couple of things, though. One is to answer the question, in order of some of the ones that the group here typically thinks about going, in order of when it will happen, ATTA, the Adventure Travel Trade Association, has its World Summit. That's one of the speaking to one of the questions. The next thing is WTM, which is a World Travel Market that is in London. That's in November. In January is the Adventure Travel Show that Snezhina mentioned. It's in London as well. And then finally, the one that keeps coming up here is ITB Berlin, which is one of the largest events in the world for this, and it happens in March every year, spring. Just for folks that are listening out there and they're thinking about the different events that are coming. There's lots of other ones that are in there. I want to bring up just 2 points, and then I'm going to thank you guys. The first is one of the slides we didn't get to, but I think it's pretty important to mention that appearance and the way behavior matters. I mean, it seems like these are kind of parties to go to, but these are very much professional events that folks will remember, both your company and your country, depending on how it is that you behave at your stand, which is pretty big. First impressions mean a lot.
If I can just butt in here, this is part of the planning for whoever is the organizer of the stand, an important one. Some of the fairs last for 5-6 days, and that is literally from 9 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock in the afternoon. You're on your feet at the stand every day, all day. Plus,
you had to set it up and push it down and knock it down and all that stuff.
Yeah, and you know, preparation time before and after, and kind of sorting out what happened, what meetings you have, keeping notes and all that other stuff. It is important to plan the staff adequately. It is important to plan the staff so that you can respond both to 3 business days and 2 general public days. So this is something in preparation and planning for the stand, both for the individual company or an organizer, someone like NTO or you know, an interest group behind, to adequately plan a number of people and to adequately schedule people and to allow for people, because it's not easy to be nice and smiley on your feet, high heels for 5 solid days, you know, 10 hours a day. So, you know, this is when you mentioned, you know, that appearances are important and behavior are important. Part of that responsibility is with planning in advance.
And I mean, just after you said that, I can't wait to take my heels off, by the way. I mean, we can talk a long time, and most of the reason that we're usually late is because of me, so I apologize. I just want to say thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for all 3 of you for joining, as always. If there's any other questions about this subject, don't hesitate to send them in. We will, I promise you, respond to them as best we can, and at least push you into a direction where you can learn a little bit more about this subject and ways to think about it. Laura, Snezhina, Chidi, thank you very much for taking the time and for helping to teach a little bit about what you know for the region. If we'll go to the last slide, these are the folks that made this possible, and I look forward to next month. We'll do it again, the last Thursday of the month. That'll be speaking about community tourism as it relates to a national tourism organization. So, you know, get prepared. We're going to have a heck of a good time. Thanks again, you guys. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Send in your questions. Please listen to us again next time, and stay out of jail.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.